The bullet grazed her shoulder as Nora Dalton stumbled through the swinging doors of the Silver Star Saloon, her hand pressed against the wound that painted her pale dress crimson. The autumn air of Durango, Colorado in 1878 carried the scent of gunpowder and dust as she collapsed against the bar, her vision blurring at the edges while the bartender shouted for someone to fetch Doc Harrington. The crowd parted around her like she was something infectious, their eyes filled with recognition and judgment, because everyone in this God-forsaken town knew exactly who she was and what her father had done. Nora had arrived in Durango 3 months ago with nothing but shame trailing behind her like a shadow. Her father, Martin Dalton, had been a banker back in St. Louis, who embezzled thousands from honest working families before putting a gun to his own head. The scandal had followed her across state lines, whispered in parlors and shouted in newspapers, until she had nowhere left to run but west. She found work at the general store, keeping her head down and her words few, but the townsfolk never let her forget whose blood ran through her veins. The wound itself was an accident, caught in the crossfire between two drunken miners settling a dispute over a card game. Nora had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, a story that seemed to define her entire existence. She pressed harder against her shoulder, feeling the warm blood seep between her fingers as someone finally returned with news that made her heart sink. "Doc says he will not come," the young boy announced, his face flushed from running. "Says he is busy with other patients." The bartender, a gray-haired man named Samuel, shook his head with disgust. "That is a damn lie. I saw him sitting on his porch not 20 minutes ago doing nothing but reading his newspaper." Nora felt tears sting her eyes, though whether from pain or humiliation she could not tell. She had known her reputation would follow her, had accepted the cold shoulders and turned backs, but she had not imagined it would cost her medical care. The wound burned like hellfire, and she could feel herself growing weaker with each passing moment. The saloon doors burst open with such force that several men jumped, hands instinctively moving toward their holsters. The figure that entered seemed to fill the entire doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath a worn black Stetson. His clothes were dusty from the trail, his jaw shadowed with several days of stubble, but his eyes were the clearest blue Nora had ever seen, sharp and assessing as they swept across the scene before him. Travis Nichols had ridden into Durango that afternoon with his cattle drive, 20 head of prime beef that would fetch a good price at market. He had been looking forward to a hot meal, a bath, and a soft bed in that order. Instead, he found himself staring at a young woman bleeding out against the bar while a room full of cowards did nothing but watch. "Someone want to tell me why that woman is bleeding and nobody is helping her." His voice was low and dangerous, the kind of tone that made men reconsider their choices. Samuel cleared his throat. "Doc Harrington refuses to see her. She is Martin Dalton's daughter." Travis had heard of Martin Dalton, of course. The story had spread even to the ranches and trail camps where he spent most of his time. A banker who stole from his customers and took the coward's way out. But as Travis looked at the woman slumped against the bar, all he saw was someone who needed help, not the sins of her father. "Where is this doctor?" Travis asked, his jaw tightening. "Has an office and home 2 streets over, the White House with the green shutters," Samuel replied. Travis crossed the room in 3 long strides, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He knelt beside Nora, his eyes softening slightly as he took in her pale face and the way she struggled to keep her eyes open. Up close, he could see she was younger than he had first thought, probably no more than 22 or 23. Her hair was the color of chestnuts, pulled back in a simple bun that was coming loose, and despite her obvious pain, there was a strength in her expression that struck something deep in his chest. "Can you hold on a few more minutes?" he asked gently. Nora managed a weak nod, her green eyes meeting his. There was kindness in his face, something she had not seen directed at her in so long that it nearly broke her composure entirely. Travis stood and turned to Samuel. "Keep pressure on that wound. I will be back with the doctor." He did not wait for a response before striding out into the fading daylight. His spurs jingled with each step as he made his way through the muddy streets of Durango, past the general store and the hotel, until he reached the white house with green shutters. The porch was empty now, but a lamp glowed in the front window. Travis did not bother knocking. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, finding a portly man in his 50s sitting at a desk, writing in a ledger. Doc Harrington looked up with annoyance that quickly turned to alarm at the expression on Travis's face. "I am closed for the evening," the doctor said, his voice trembling slightly. "There is a woman bleeding at the Silver Star who needs your help," Travis said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I heard about that unfortunate incident. However, I have other patients who require my attention this evening," Doc Harrington replied, but his eyes would not meet Travis's. Travis reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather pouch, dropping it on the desk with a heavy clink. "That is 3 times your usual fee. You will see her right now." The doctor stared at the pouch, then back at Travis. "Young man, I do not think you understand the situation. That woman is Martin Dalton's daughter. Her father ruined countless families before taking his own life. I have patients in this town, respected patients, who would not appreciate me treating someone with such questionable character." Travis leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk, his face inches from the doctor's. "I understand perfectly. You are a coward who breaks his oath because of gossip and prejudice. That woman did not steal anyone's money. She did not pull any triggers. She is just someone who got caught in a crossfire and needs medical attention. Now, you can take this money and do your job, or you can explain to the sheriff why you let someone die, because you are more concerned with your reputation than your duty." The threat hung in the air between them. Doc Harrington swallowed hard, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. After a long moment, he reached for the pouch with shaking hands. "Very well, but I want it known that I am doing this under duress." "I do not care what you tell yourself to sleep at night," Travis replied coldly. "Get your bag." They made the walk back to the Silver Star in tense silence. The saloon had grown more crowded, word of the incident having spread, and a hush fell over the room when Travis entered with Doc Harrington in tow. Nora was still conscious, though barely, and Samuel had done his best to keep pressure on the wound. Doc Harrington set his bag on a nearby table and began examining her with professional efficiency, though his manner remained cold. Travis stayed close, his presence a silent promise that the doctor would give her the same care he would anyone else. "The bullet passed through cleanly," Doc Harrington announced after several minutes. "She has lost a good amount of blood, but if we can get the bleeding stopped and prevent infection, she should recover. However, she will need somewhere quiet to rest for the next several days. Moving her in this condition would be ill-advised." Travis looked around the saloon. "She cannot stay here." "She has a room at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house," Samuel offered, 2 streets over near the church. "Mrs. Patterson will not take her back," a woman's voice called from the crowd. "She made it clear that Miss Dalton was only there on a trial basis, and this kind of trouble would not be tolerated." Travis felt anger flare hot in his chest. This woman could not catch a break in this town, and he was starting to understand why. Durango was like many frontier towns, quick to judge and slow to forgive, especially when it came to scandal. "I have a room at the hotel," Travis found himself saying. "She can stay there." The crowd erupted in whispers and gasps. Doc Harrington looked up sharply. "That would be highly improper." "I will sleep in the stable," Travis said firmly. "She needs somewhere clean and quiet to recover, and since this town seems determined to let her suffer, I will provide it myself." Doc Harrington finished cleaning and bandaging the wound, then administered some laudanum for the pain. Nora's eyes had drifted closed, the medicine taking quick effect. Travis paid the bartender for any trouble, then carefully lifted Nora into his arms. She weighed next to nothing, her body limp against his chest, and he felt a fierce protectiveness surge through him that he could not quite explain. The walk to the hotel drew stares from every direction, but Travis ignored them all. The hotel clerk, a nervous young man named Peter, tried to protest the arrangement, but Travis simply stared him down until he produced a key. Travis carried Nora up the stairs to his room, a modest space with a single bed, a washstand, and a chair by the window. He laid her gently on the bed, pulling off her shoes and arranging the blankets around her. In the lamplight, he could see her face more clearly, the delicate bone structure and the shadows beneath her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. There was a sadness about her even in unconsciousness, a weight she carried that went beyond physical pain. Travis stood there for a long moment, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, making sure it stayed steady and even. Then he gathered a few of his things, left money on the dresser for meals to be brought up, and quietly left the room, locking it behind him. The stable was not the worst place he had ever slept. The hay was clean and dry, and he had his bedroll and saddle for comfort. But sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about the way the whole town had been ready to let that woman die, about the coldness in their eyes and the cruelty in their words. He had seen a lot of ugly things in his 30 years, but that kind of casual inhumanity still had the power to disturb him. Travis had grown up on a ranch in Texas, the youngest of 4 brothers. He had learned to ride before he could properly walk, learned to rope and brand and drive cattle through every kind of weather and terrain. His father had been a hard man but a fair one, and he had taught his sons that character was measured by how you treated those who could not fight back, not by how tough you were with your equals. When Travis was 18, his father had died in a riding accident, leaving the ranch to the oldest brother. Travis had stayed for a few years, but eventually the wanderlust got too strong. He had left home at 23 and spent the past 7 years working cattle drives, breaking horses, and taking whatever honest work came his way. It was a lonely life in many ways, but it was free. And after growing up with 3 overbearing brothers and a mother who constantly worried, freedom had seemed like the most valuable thing in the world. Now, lying in the hay with the sound of horses shifting in their stalls, Travis wondered if maybe freedom was not all it was cracked up to be. There was something hollow about a life with no real connections, no one waiting for you at the end of the trail. He had never given much thought to settling down, to finding a woman and building something permanent. But seeing Nora lying there so vulnerable and alone had stirred something in him that felt suspiciously like longing. He finally drifted off near dawn, his dreams filled with green eyes and the scent of lavender. When Travis woke a few hours later, the sun was already climbing toward noon. He splashed water on his face from the trough, changed into a clean shirt, and headed to the hotel. Peter was still at the desk, looking nervous when Travis approached. "I had breakfast sent up an hour ago like you asked," Peter said quickly. "And Doc Harrington came by to check on the patient. He said she was sleeping peacefully and the wound looked clean." Travis nodded his approval and headed upstairs. He knocked softly on the door, waited a moment, then used his key to enter. Nora was awake, sitting up against the pillows with the untouched breakfast tray beside her. She looked startled when he entered, her hand moving instinctively to her bandaged shoulder. "Easy," Travis said, holding up his hands. "I am not here to hurt you. I am the one who brought you here last night." Recognition dawned in her eyes, followed quickly by confusion and something that might have been shame. "I remember you. You made Doc Harrington come. I heard what you paid him." Travis closed the door and moved to the chair by the window, sitting down to put some distance between them. He could see she was nervous, and he did not want to make it worse by crowding her. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I was shot," Nora replied, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I apologize. That was rude. You saved my life, and I should be more grateful." "You do not need to apologize for stating facts," Travis said with a slight smile. "And you do not owe me anything. I just did what anyone decent should have done." Nora looked down at her hands, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "But you are the only one who did." The pain in those words made Travis's chest tighten. He wanted to say something comforting, but he had never been good with words, so instead he just sat there, giving her space to feel whatever she needed to feel. After a moment, Nora looked up again, her eyes searching his face. "Why?" "You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Why would you spend that kind of money and give up your room for someone like me?" "Someone like you," Travis repeated, his brow furrowing. "You mean someone who was shot and needed help. That is not complicated." "You know what I mean," Nora said, her voice gaining strength. "Everyone in this town knows who I am, what my father did. They have made it very clear that I am not welcome here, that I am responsible for his sins." Travis leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression serious. "Your father's choices are not your burden to carry. You did not steal anyone's money. You did not do anything wrong except be born to a man who made terrible decisions. Anyone who cannot see that is a fool." Tears welled up in Nora's eyes, and she blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back. "You do not understand. It is not that simple. His victims have every right to hate me." "They have the right to hate him," Travis corrected gently. "But hate is a poison, and this town seems determined to drink it down and blame you for the taste." A tear escaped down Nora's cheek, and she brushed it away quickly. "I thought if I came west, if I left St. Louis behind, I could start over, but the scandal followed me. Someone recognized my name at the boarding house, and within a week, everyone knew. I have been trying to prove I am different, that I am honest and hardworking, but it does not matter what I do. They have already decided who I am." Travis felt a surge of anger at the injustice of it, but he kept his voice calm. "Then maybe Durango is not the right place for you." Nora laughed bitterly. "I have nowhere else to go. I spent everything I had just getting here. My mother disowned me when the scandal broke, said I reminded her too much of him. I have no siblings, no other family. This is all I have." "You could leave anyway," Travis said. "There are other towns, other opportunities. You are young and clearly capable. You do not have to stay somewhere you are not wanted." "Easy for you to say," Nora replied, but there was no real heat in her words. "You are a man. You can go anywhere, do anything. The world is open to you in ways it will never be open to me." Travis could not argue with that. He had seen enough of the world to know that women faced obstacles men never had to consider, especially women alone without family or fortune. But he also knew that Nora was stronger than she gave herself credit for. He could see it in the way she held herself, the way she had not completely broken despite everything working against her. "Fair point," he admitted, "but I still think you are tougher than this town gives you credit for." Nora studied him for a long moment, her expression softening. "What is your name? I have been so caught up in my own misery that I never asked. Travis Nichols, he replied. I am a cattleman mostly, drive herds from Texas up to markets in Colorado and Wyoming. That sounds like a hard life. It has its moments, Travis said with a shrug. But it is honest work and I am my own boss. That counts for something. It counts for a lot, Nora said quietly. Then even quieter, thank you, Travis, for everything. I do not think I said that properly before. You are welcome, Nora Dalton, Travis replied. And the way he said her name with no judgment or hesitation made something warm bloom in her chest. They talked for a while longer, the conversation drifting from topic to topic with surprising ease. Travis learned that Nora loved to read, that she had taught herself basic bookkeeping and mathematics, that she played the piano when she had access to one. Nora learned that Travis had never been to school but could track game through any terrain, that he had once broken a wild Mustang that 3 other men had given up on, that he missed his mother's cooking more than he would ever admit to his brothers. By the time Travis left to let her rest, something had shifted between them. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it was there, a connection that went beyond rescuer and rescued, beyond kindness and gratitude. Over the next 3 days, Travis visited Nora regularly, bringing her meals and fresh water, making sure Doc Harrington came by to check her wound. The doctor remained cold and professional, but he did his job, and the wound was healing cleanly. Nora grew stronger each day, able to sit up for longer periods, able to move around the room without becoming dizzy. Travis found himself looking forward to those visits more than he wanted to admit. Nora was intelligent and quick-witted, with a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh. She asked him about his travels, about the places he had seen and the things he had done, and she listened with genuine interest that was both flattering and slightly unnerving. For her part, Nora found herself thinking about Travis even when he was not there. She replayed their conversations in her mind, analyzing every word and gesture, trying to understand why this stranger had shown her more kindness than anyone in her own family. He was handsome, certainly, with those blue eyes and strong jaw, but it was more than that. There was a steadiness about him, a quiet strength that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in years. On the 4th day, Nora was well enough to dress herself, though her shoulder was still tender. She had washed as best she could with the basin and pitcher, and she had borrowed a needle and thread from the hotel to repair the worst of the damage to her dress. When Travis arrived that afternoon, she was standing by the window, looking out at the street below. "You are up," Travis said, unable to hide his smile. "That is good to see." "I was going crazy lying in bed," Nora admitted. "Though I suppose I should start thinking about what comes next. I cannot stay in your room forever, and I need to find work if I am going to survive in this town." Travis's expression grew serious. "Have you considered that maybe you should not try to survive here? There are other places, Nora, places where no one knows your name or your history. I told you, I have no money to go anywhere else. What if you did?" Travis asked, pulling out a chair and sitting down. "What if you had enough money to get to a new town to start fresh somewhere else?" Nora turned from the window, her eyes narrowing. "I am not taking your money, Travis. You have already done more than enough for me." "It is not charity," Travis said quickly. "I need help with the drive back to Texas. My regular cook broke his leg 2 weeks ago, and I have been managing on my own, but I could use someone who knows their way around a camp kitchen. The job pays $50 for the 6-week drive, plus meals and transportation. By the time we reach Texas, you would have enough money to go anywhere you wanted." Nora stared at him, trying to determine if he was serious. "You want me to cook for a cattle drive? Why not?" "You can cook, can you not?" Yes, but I am a woman. I cannot just ride off with a group of strange men. It is not a group, it is just me, Travis explained. I usually hire local hands to help me drive the cattle, but I let them go when we reach Durango. I am heading back to Texas with just my horse and whatever supplies I need. It would be you, me, and the trail, all proper and respectable. Nora's mind raced. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had never done anything like that before, had never been more than a few miles from civilization. But the alternative was staying in Durango, trying to scrape by in a town that hated her, working jobs that barely paid enough to keep her fed. What about my shoulder? She asked, grasping at practical concerns. We will wait another week until you are fully healed. The weather is holding and I am in no rush. And you truly think this is a good idea? Just the two of us, alone on the trail? Travis met her eyes steadily. I think it is a better idea than you staying here. But it is your choice, Nora. I will not force you into anything. Nora walked back to the bed and sat down, her hands clasped in her lap. Every sensible part of her brain was screaming that this was crazy, that she barely knew this man, that anything could happen on a 6-week journey through wilderness. But there was another part of her, a part that had been silent for so long, that was whispering this might be her only chance at something better. Give me time to think about it, she finally said. Travis nodded and stood to leave. Take all the time you need. I will be in town for at least another week regardless. After he left, Nora sat in the quiet room, listening to the sounds of Durango going about its business below. She thought about the general store where she had worked, how the owner had made her enter through the back door so customers would not see her. She thought about Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, how the other tenants had complained about sharing a roof with her. She thought about the way Doc Harrington had been willing to let her die rather than tarnish his reputation. Then she thought about Travis, about his steady gaze and his quiet kindness, about the way he had stood up for her when no one else would. She did not know him well, but everything she did know suggested he was a good man, an honorable man. And maybe that was enough. By the time Travis returned the next morning, Nora had made her decision. I will do it, she said as soon as he entered the room. I will come with you to Texas. Travis's face broke into a wide smile, transforming his usually serious expression into something warm and open. You will not regret this, Nora, I promise you. I hope you are right, Nora replied, but she found herself smiling back. The next week passed in a flurry of preparations. Travis bought supplies for the journey while Nora regained her strength, walking a little farther each day until she could make it around the block without getting winded. Her shoulder healed cleanly, the stitches coming out without complication, though Doc Harrington still refused to speak to her beyond what was medically necessary. Travis also bought Nora practical clothes for the trail, sturdy trousers, boots, and a wide-brimmed hat to protect her from the sun. When Nora protested the expense, Travis reminded her that it was an investment in his cook, and she grudgingly accepted. On the morning they were set to leave, Nora returned to the general store one last time to collect the wages she was owed. The owner, a thin man named Gregory, looked surprised to see her. I heard you were laid up at the hotel, he said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that arrangement. I was shot, Nora replied coolly, but I have recovered. I am leaving Durango today and I came for my wages. Gregory opened the cash box reluctantly, counting out coins with obvious displeasure. I suppose you think you are owed the full amount, even though you have not worked in over a week. I am owed what I earned before I was shot, Nora said firmly. Nothing more, nothing less. He finally handed over the money and Nora counted it carefully, making sure he had not tried to cheat her. Satisfied, she pocketed the coins and turned to leave. "Running away with that cowboy, are you?" Gregory called after her. "I suppose that is fitting, given your background. Your father was a thief, and you are nothing but a—" Finish that sentence, and you will regret it. Both Nora and Gregory looked up to find Travis standing in the doorway, his expression dark and dangerous. He had come looking for Nora when she took longer than expected, and he had heard enough. Gregory's face went pale. "I was just making conversation." "No, you were being cruel to someone who never did anything to you," Travis said, his voice low. "Men like you are all the same. Big talk when you are safe behind your counter, but no backbone when someone calls you on it." Travis walked over to where Nora stood, offering her his arm. She took it gratefully, letting him escort her out of the store with her head held high. Once they were outside, she let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You do not need to thank me for basic decency," Travis replied. "But I am glad to see you standing up for yourself. You did not flinch in there." "I have had plenty of practice," Nora said with a sad smile. They walked back to the hotel together, collected Nora's few belongings, and headed to the livery where Travis had left his horse and the wagon he had purchased for the journey. The wagon was small but sturdy, with enough room for supplies and a bedroll. Travis had also bought a gentle mare for Nora to ride, a pretty chestnut with a white star on her forehead. "She is beautiful," Nora breathed, reaching out to stroke the mare's soft nose. "Her name is Rosie," Travis said. "The previous owner swore she has the sweetest temperament of any horse he ever raised. I thought she would be good for you." Nora felt tears prick her eyes at his thoughtfulness. "You did not have to do all this." "Yes, I did," Travis said simply. "Now come on. Let us get out of this town before I do something I will regret." They rode out of Durango as the sun climbed higher in the sky, leaving behind the white houses and muddy streets, the judgmental stares and cruel whispers. Nora looked back once, just once, then turned her face forward and did not look back again. The trail south was rugged and beautiful, winding through mountains and valleys, past crystal streams and towering pines. Travis set an easy pace, mindful of Nora's healing shoulder and her inexperience with long days in the saddle. They stopped frequently to rest and water the horses, and Travis pointed out landmarks and wildlife, teaching her to read the land the way he did. At night, they made camp under the stars, and Travis showed Nora how to build a proper fire, how to cook beans and bacon over open flames, how to make coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Nora proved to be a quick learner, her hands capable and her mind sharp. She asked questions constantly, wanting to understand everything about this new world she had entered. They talked around those campfires, sharing stories from their pasts, their voices carrying on the night air. Travis told her about his brothers, about the ranch in Texas, about the time he nearly drowned crossing a swollen river during a spring drive. Nora told him about growing up in St. Louis, about her mother's coldness and her father's charm, about the libraries where she had spent every free moment escaping into books. With each passing day, the walls between them crumbled a little more. Travis found himself watching Nora when she was not looking, noticing the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the way her whole face lit up when she laughed. Nora caught herself doing the same, admiring the way Travis moved with such confidence and grace, the way his rare smiles made her heart skip. One evening, about 2 weeks into the journey, they made camp near a small lake, the water mirror smooth and reflecting the purple sky. After dinner, Nora walked down to the shore, drawn by the peaceful beauty of it. She stood there for a long time, watching the stars emerge one by one, feeling something close to contentment for the first time in months. She did not hear Travis approach until he was standing beside her, his shoulder nearly touching hers. Pretty, is it not? He said softly. It is perfect, Nora replied. I never imagined anything could be this beautiful. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the gentle lap of water against the shore and the distant call of a night bird. Finally, Travis cleared his throat. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. You ever think about forgiving him? Your father, I mean. Nora was quiet for so long that Travis worried he had overstepped. But then she spoke, her voice thoughtful. I think about it all the time. I am so angry at him, Travis. Angry that he was weak, that he made such terrible choices, that he left me alone to deal with the consequences. But I also remember the good times, before everything fell apart. He used to take me to the park on Sundays and buy me peppermint sticks. He taught me to play chess and let me win until I got good enough to beat him fairly. He was not always a monster. People are complicated, Travis said. We all have light and shadow in us. I just wish he had been stronger, Nora continued. Wish he had faced what he did instead of running. Maybe if he had tried to make amends, tried to fix things, it would be different. But he just gave up, and now I am the one who has to carry all this weight. Travis reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. Her fingers were cold from the evening air, and he rubbed his thumb gently across her knuckles. You do not have to carry it alone anymore, he said quietly. I know we have not known each other long, but I want you to know that I am here, for whatever you need. Nora looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. In the fading light, his eyes were dark and serious, and she could see the sincerity written in every line of his expression. Something shifted in her chest, a wall she had not even realized she had built crumbling away. Why are you so kind to me? She whispered. I still do not understand it. Travis was quiet for a moment, seeming to struggle with how to put his feelings into words. Because you deserve kindness. Because I see how strong you are, even when you do not see it yourself. Because when I look at you, I do not see someone defined by their father's mistakes. I just see you, Nora, and I like what I see. Nora felt her breath catch in her throat. No one had ever said anything like that to her before, had ever made her feel seen and valued for who she was rather than who she was related to. Without thinking, she stepped closer, closing the small distance between them. I like what I see too, she said softly. They stood there, hands still clasped, the air between them charged with possibility. Travis lifted his free hand slowly, cupping her cheek with a gentleness that made her eyes sting with tears. He gave her every opportunity to pull away, to change her mind, but she did not move. She just looked up at him with those green eyes, and he was lost. He kissed her softly, a barely there brush of lips that was more question than statement. Nora made a small sound in the back of her throat and kissed him back, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. The kiss deepened slowly, sweetly, neither of them rushing, both savoring the moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, their foreheads resting together. Travis's hand was still cupped around her face, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her cheek. I have been wanting to do that since the day I met you, he admitted with a slight laugh. You have very good timing, Nora replied, her voice shaky but happy. They walked back to camp hand in hand, neither wanting to let go. That night they sat closer by the fire, Nora's head resting on Travis's shoulder, his arm around her waist. They did not talk much, just sat in comfortable silence, both processing what had happened, what it might mean for the future. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened and grew. They stole kisses when they thought the other was not expecting it, held hands while they rode side by side, talked late into the night about their dreams and fears. Travis told Nora he wanted to buy his own ranch someday, a place where he could raise cattle and horses. Build something permanent. Nora admitted she had always dreamed of opening a bookstore, a place where people could come and discover new worlds the way she had. They learned each other's quirks and habits. Nora discovered that Travis was grumpy until he had his morning coffee, that he sang quietly to himself when he thought he was alone, that he had a scar on his ribs from a bull that had nearly killed him when he was 20. Travis learned that Nora talked in her sleep, that she was terrified of snakes but fascinated by thunderstorms, that she had a beautiful laugh that she rarely let loose, but that he was determined to hear as often as possible. They also learned to work together seamlessly. Nora became adept at managing the camp, keeping their supplies organized and their meals varied and filling. Travis taught her to shoot, patiently correcting her form until she could hit a target at 50 yards. They developed a rhythm, each anticipating the other's needs, moving around each other with easy familiarity. One night, about 4 weeks into the journey, they camped in a small canyon with high red walls that glowed in the firelight. Travis had shot a deer earlier in the day, and they roasted the venison slowly, the smell making both their mouths water. After dinner, Nora cleaned up while Travis checked on the horses, and when he returned, he found her standing in the middle of the canyon, her face tilted up to the sky. "What are you looking at?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Everything," Nora said. "The stars, the canyon walls, this whole impossible world. A few months ago, I was living in a tiny room in Durango, convinced my life was over. Now I am here, under these stars with you, and I feel like I can breathe again." Travis pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I know what you mean. I spent so many years just drifting, moving from job to job, place to place, never really feeling like I belonged anywhere. But being with you, it feels different. It feels like maybe I have been looking for something all along, and I just did not know it until I found you." Nora turned in his arms, her hands sliding up to link behind his neck. "Travis Nichols, I think I am falling in love with you." His heart stuttered in his chest, and for a moment, he could not breathe. Then a slow smile spread across his face, and he laughed, pure joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. "Nora Dalton, I am absolutely certain I am falling in love with you too." They kissed under the stars, the canyon walls holding them in a private world of their own making. And for the first time in her life, Nora felt truly, completely happy. As they continued south, entering Texas, the landscape changed from mountains to rolling plains, the air growing warmer with each passing day. They were getting close to Travis's home territory now, and he pointed out familiar landmarks with obvious affection. Nora could see how much he loved this land, how deeply it was woven into his identity. About 5.5 weeks into the journey, they rode into a small town called Cedar Springs, Travis's hometown. It was tiny compared to Durango or St. Louis, just a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads, but it had a friendly, welcoming feel that Durango had lacked. People waved as they rode past, calling greetings to Travis, eyeing Nora with curiosity but not hostility. Travis led them to a small ranch on the outskirts of town, a modest spread with a white farmhouse and a red barn. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, her hand shading her eyes against the sun. When she recognized Travis, she let out a cry of joy and ran toward them. "Travis. Oh, my boy, you are home." Travis dismounted quickly and caught his mother in a tight embrace, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. She was a small woman with gray hair and a round, kind face, and she laughed and cried at the same time, holding onto her son like she might never let go. "Mama, I want you to meet someone," Travis said when he finally set her down. He reached up to help Nora dismount, keeping her hand in his as he made the introductions. "This is Nora Dalton. She has been helping me on the drive home. Nora, this is my mother, Sarah Nichols." Sarah looked between them, her sharp eyes taking in their joined hands and the way they stood close together, and a knowing smile spread across her face. "It is very nice to meet you, Nora," Sarah said warmly. "Any friend of Travis's is welcome here. Please come inside. You both must be exhausted and hungry." Over dinner, Travis explained how they met, carefully editing the story to focus on Nora's injury and the town's refusal to help rather than the scandal that had preceded it. Sarah listened intently, her expression growing increasingly outraged. "That is disgraceful," she declared when Travis finished. "What kind of town lets someone suffer like that? You did the right thing, son. I raised you better than to stand by and do nothing." "Thank you, Mrs. Nichols," Nora said softly. "Your son quite literally saved my life." "Please call me Sarah," Travis's mother insisted. "And I suspect he did more than save your life, judging by the way you two keep looking at each other." Both Travis and Nora blushed, and Sarah laughed, delighted. Over the next few days, Nora and Sarah grew close. The older woman was warm and welcoming, treating Nora like family from the first moment. She taught Nora her recipe for apple pie, showed her the vegetable garden, and told her stories about Travis as a boy that made him groan with embarrassment, and Nora laughed until her sides hurt. Travis's brothers came to visit, curious about the woman their little brother had brought home. Thomas, the oldest, was serious and responsible, running the family ranch with quiet competence. Theodore, the middle brother, was jovial and loud, constantly teasing Travis about being smitten. Timothy, only a year older than Travis, was gentle and thoughtful, and he quickly became Nora's friend, asking about her love of books and promising to lend her volumes from his own collection. They all welcomed Nora without reservation, and for the first time since her father's death, Nora felt like she had a family again. One evening, about a week after their arrival, Travis asked Nora to walk with him. They strolled through the fields behind the house, the grass golden in the setting sun, until they reached a small rise that looked out over the valley. "I have been thinking about the future," Travis said, his voice serious. "About what I want to do with my life." Nora felt her heart sink, worried he was about to tell her that their time together was ending, that he needed to move on. But then he took her hands in his, turning to face her fully. "I have spent the last 7 years wandering, never staying in one place long enough to build anything real. But meeting you changed something in me, Nora. You made me want more than just the next job, the next trail. You made me want a home." "Travis," Nora whispered, hardly daring to hope. "I talked to Thomas this morning. He is willing to sell me a piece of the ranch, enough land to build a house and start my own herd. It would not be much at first, but it would be ours. If you wanted it to be ours, I mean." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring, delicate and beautiful. "Nora Dalton, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you agreed to come to Texas with me?" Tears streamed down Nora's face, but she was smiling so wide it almost hurt. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Travis, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, deep and passionate, pouring all his love and hope into that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. They were married 2 months later in the small church in Cedar Springs. Sarah cried through the entire ceremony, and Thomas and Timothy stood up for Travis, while the local shopkeeper's wife, who had become Nora's friend, stood up for her. Theodore gave a toast at the reception that was equal parts touching and embarrassing, and everyone danced until their feet hurt. Nora wore a simple white dress that Sarah had helped her make, and she carried wildflowers that Travis had picked that morning. when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Travis kissed her in front of God and the whole town, Nora felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They moved into a small cabin on the land Thomas had sold them, and Travis began building their herd. It was hard work from dawn until dusk, but they did it together. Nora managed their finances, keeping careful records of every expense and profit, her training in mathematics proving invaluable. She also started a small garden and began taking in sewing work from women in town, saving every penny toward their dream of expansion. In the evenings, they would sit on their porch, watching the sun set over the valley, talking about their plans and dreams. Travis wanted to eventually have enough cattle to run his own drives without relying on buyers. Nora still dreamed of her bookstore, and Travis promised that when they had enough saved, he would help her make it happen. A year after their wedding, Nora discovered she was pregnant. Travis was overjoyed, though terrified at the same time, and he became ridiculously overprotective, trying to prevent her from doing any work at all. Nora had to gently remind him that she was pregnant, not fragile, and that she needed to stay active. Their son was born on a warm spring morning, and they named him Daniel, after Travis's father. He had Travis's blue eyes and Nora's dark hair, and both parents were instantly, completely in love. Sarah came to stay for a few weeks to help, and she spoiled both mother and baby shamelessly. As Daniel grew, the ranch prospered. Travis's hard work and Nora's careful management paid off, and they were able to expand their herd and improve their land. They built a larger house, with a real kitchen for Nora and a study where she kept her growing collection of books. Travis added a barn and corrals and eventually hired a hand to help with the work. 2 years after Daniel's birth, they had twin daughters, Emma and Grace. The house filled with noise and laughter, with the sound of small feet running across wooden floors and childish giggles echoing through the rooms. Nora proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving, and Travis was completely wrapped around all 3 children's fingers. In the evenings after the children were asleep, Travis and Nora would sit together, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest, and marvel at how far they had come. From a saloon in Durango where she had been bleeding and alone, to this home they had built together, filled with love and family. "You ever regret it?" Nora asked one night. "Taking that chance on me, paying the doctor, bringing me to Texas?" Travis laughed softly, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Nora. You and our children, this life we built. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Even paying the doctor triple his fee," she teased. "Especially that," Travis replied. "That was the best money I ever spent." When Daniel turned 6, Nora finally opened her bookstore in Cedar Springs. It was small, just 2 rooms in a building on Main Street, but she filled it with every book she could get her hands on, from dime novels to poetry collections to agricultural manuals. She opened a lending library in the back room, charging a small fee that helped support the store, and she started a reading group that met every Tuesday evening. The store became a gathering place for the community, somewhere people could come not just to buy books, but to discuss ideas and share stories. Nora loved every minute of it, and Travis loved seeing her so happy, doing what she had always dreamed of doing. As the years passed, their family continued to grow. They had another son, James, and 1 more daughter, Lily. The ranch expanded to over 200 acres with a substantial herd that provided a comfortable living. Travis's brothers remained close, their children growing up together, cousins and best friends all at once. Sarah lived to see all her grandchildren grown, passing peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82. Her funeral was attended by half the county, testimony to how beloved she had been. Nora mourned her deeply, having come to love Sarah like her own mother, and she made sure her children knew the stories of the grandmother who had welcomed a stranger with such open arms. When Nora turned 40, Travis took her back to the place where they had first confessed their love, that small lake where they had camped so many years before. They rode out together, just the two of them, leaving the ranch in the capable hands of Daniel, who was 18 now and preparing to take over the operation someday. They made camp by the lake, and as they sat watching the stars emerge, Travis pulled Nora close. 20 years, he said softly. 20 years since I walked into that saloon and saw you bleeding and alone. Best decision you ever made, Nora teased, echoing their old joke. Absolutely, Travis agreed. You know, I think about that day sometimes. About how close I came to just walking away, to deciding it was not my business. What would have happened if I had? But you did not walk away, Nora said firmly. You stayed, you fought for me, you saved me, and then you loved me and you gave me this beautiful life. I know I do not say it enough, but thank you, Travis. Thank you for seeing me when no one else would. I love you, Nora Nichols, Travis said, kissing her temple. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you until my last breath. I love you too, Nora whispered, and they sat together under the stars, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built something beautiful from it. Their children grew and married, giving them grandchildren who filled the ranch with new energy and life. Daniel took over the ranch as planned, running it with the same dedication his father had. Emma became a teacher, Grace a nurse, James a lawyer, and Lily took over the bookstore, expanding it to include a small publishing operation. Travis and Nora grew old together, their hair turning silver, their faces lined with years of laughter and love. They sat on their porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built. Sometimes they told their grandchildren the story of how they met, about the doctor who refused to see her, about the cowboy who paid him triple and insisted he would see her right now, about the journey from Colorado to Texas that changed both their lives forever. When Travis passed away at 78, it was peacefully in his sleep, with Nora beside him as she had been for over 50 years. She held his hand as he took his last breath, whispering her love one final time, and though her heart broke, she was grateful for every single moment they had shared. Nora lived another 5 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them carrying forward the legacy of love and resilience that she and Travis had built. She never stopped running the bookstore, never stopped reading and learning and growing, and when she finally passed at 83, she went peacefully, a slight smile on her face. They buried her next to Travis on the hill overlooking the valley, where they had once stood as a young couple planning their future. Their headstone was simple, bearing their names and the dates of their births and deaths, with one final inscription: two souls who found each other in the darkness and built a life in the light. And though they were gone, their love lived on in the family they had created, in the ranch that still bore their name, in the bookstore that continued to serve the community, in all the lives they had touched over the decades. They had started with nothing but each other, and a willingness to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. And they had proven that love, real love, could overcome anything. The people of Cedar Springs told their story for generations, about the woman who came from scandal and the cowboy who saw beyond it, about how a single act of kindness in a saloon in Durango, Colorado had rippled out to create something beautiful and lasting. It became a reminder that every person deserves to be seen for who they are, not who they are related to, and that sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most unlikely places. In the end, Nora and Travis had found exactly what they were looking for, even though neither had known they were searching. They had found home, not in a place but in each other, and they had built a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. And if love could be measured not in years but in moments, in the quiet touches and shared glances and whispered promises, then theirs was the richest love story ever told, a testament to the power of seeing someone truly and loving them completely, flaws and scars and all. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived on that ranch, still ran cattle through those valleys, still told stories about the ancestors who started it all. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun set just right, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, the family swore they could feel their presence. Two souls still watching over the land they loved, still holding hands, still together even in eternity.